Are you ready to learn how to effectively interview a virtual assistant for your business? Now, if you guys watch until the end of this video, I'm actually walking you through the actual questions and PDF that we send to our clients at 2XU to know and determine if the virtual assistant is right for them. I'll also give you the explanation of why these questions are important and what to look out for as you're interviewing, hopefully, someone who can become your second brain. Now, the first question is just asking them outright, what is your office situation like? Now, beyond the tools that they might have, which you want to make sure is a match for who you need. So for example, we have clients who have preferred hiring someone who already has a Mac just because that's what they use, or Windows, or even physical tools that they might need. For example, we just bought one of our executive assistants a Stream Deck because their client needs it. So things like that, just asking them what does that look like for them, but it's also finding out what their general home office situation looks like. Do they have a separate room in the house for it? Do they just share basically their dining room with everyone else in the family, and then that's how they get to work? It's just finding out what does it look like behind the camera that they're using, of how they're going to be able to work, how effective they will be, and also if that say that the position requires them to be on a lot of calls, making sure that they have a really nice background maybe set up, maybe setting up with Zoom. But the point is that you are able to have a good picture of what their work situation is like. Next is you want to ask them as well of where are they generally located. Are they in a city? Are they in a rural area? Of like, is it hard for them to find backup for internet if their internet goes out? Life, technology, whatever. You want to know if they're able to go to a co-working space or a cafe really quickly if their internet doesn't work out, or do they have a backup internet for things. If you're hiring from someone in a third country like here in the Philippines, what's their backup if their electricity goes out? Because rolling blackouts happen here in the Philippines. So you want to find out what are their backups, basically what are their plans, if they still need to work and technology just fails. Next is asking them everyone's favorite question of tell me about yourself. However, the twist that I add is tell me about yourself outside of work. Like, who are you outside of this role that you're trying to apply for? This is just a way to kind of get to know them a little bit better. What are their likes, their dislikes, how do they spend their time? Which brings me to the next really good question that I love asking, which is, what do you like to do for fun? So it's finding out what are the hobbies, what are things that drive them, what are things that motivate them. And honestly, when I ask these two questions, especially back to back, if they didn't answer it already in the first question, I figured out what are the things that I can do to reward them. Like, what are the things that they also do to motivate themselves. And also, one of the things that we've looked at of all of our executive assistants at 2XU, the ones who've been with us for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, we're only 4 years old, and with our clients who've also been with them for that long, what are the key factors that they share? And one of them that we found is that they have a life outside of work. And it's really important that they do. They need to have something that pushes them to love their work, because their work basically gives them the freedom to do more of what they love. So that's kind of the biggest reason why for a lot of our EAs, they love working with 2XU, because they have the flexibility to work almost at any time. They're able to work anywhere. They're able to travel. They're able to do their hobbies like their yoga or their hiking or biking, whatever that looks like for them. They have a way to not just have fun, but they also have a way to kind of process themselves. Maybe they're going through stress, as work and life does. They also have a way to reward themselves, just like you can reward them. Like, for example, in 2XU, we have a lot of our EAs who love to read. So a lot of them, since coming to 2XU, within a year have gotten at least 3 or 4 books from 2XU, just because we love rewarding them with it. So this gives you, again, that sneak peek of who they are outside, and also a way for you to reward them and to see if they can also be self-motivating. Honestly, when I've seen a lot of people who said oh, I don't really have things to do for fun, maybe just sleep, maybe that's mostly it, I've found that those people don't really last within, at least in the 2XU environment, just because we find things to motivate them, to get them to reach their goals or whatever their plans are in life. We see that with this question and what they like to do for fun. Next are the more technical and behavioral questions, such as asking them what is your confidence on this skill? So they might be a 10 out of 10 on writing skill, but they're actually not that confident on it. There might be a reason behind that. It might be a task that they actually don't enjoy, or they might be wanting to explore it a little bit more. So asking them on each of the skill that you've identified that you want to delegate to a virtual assistant, you just want to ask them hey, rating yourself from 1 to 10 on these skills, how confident are you? And if they're saying oh, it's a 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 10, then you want to ask the follow-up question of what are you doing to be more confident in this, or what do you need to be more confident in it? Again, maybe it just needs a little bit more experience or just a little bit more mentoring on this, and also sets the expectation with you to know what are the skills basically that they consider their strengths, and what are the skills that they consider that they might be still working on. Next is asking the question, how do you learn new skills? And the biggest reason why you want to ask this is you want to learn how they absorb information. Like for me, I would rather read a whole book for a whole week rather than honestly go through a 2-hour webinar. That's kind of just a little bit of how I'm wired. And for a lot of our EAs, we've modified a lot of our own training on how they absorb information. So let's say we have one person who really can't, doesn't enjoy reading, but they would rather just listen to the audiobook. We're able to give them the audiobook. If you have someone who prefers a lot of webinars and courses, for us, we make the effort of finding live workshops and courses that they can go through, because basically that's how they keep their attention and be able to retain information. It's also a good way for you to know later on how you can best delegate tasks to them. If there's someone who likes to read, then texting is the way to go. If there's someone who likes to listen or watch, then maybe sending a screen recording video or maybe a voice recorded audio to them to give them instructions basically on what you need to get done. Next is asking them also what are their preferred tools. Like if they've done experience before on using CRMs or using email or using graphics, maybe just knowing where they're at as well on the tools, the variety of tools that they've used before. It's going to be helpful for you, because then if there's a match, of course, then it's easy for you to delegate. And if there's a tool that they've used and they've loved and they've mastered and it's not quite the match for what you have, it might be also a convincing factor for you to either switch to that tool or teach them to the tool that you are using. You can also, of course, ask them behavioral questions, such as asking like, how do you usually handle a crisis situation? Like how do you handle if the project gone wrong in a lot of different ways and you don't know how to handle it? How would you break that down so then you can either succeed or pivot as you need? You can also ask questions like, how do you usually handle conflict? Tell me a time that you went through a little bit of conflict and how you were able to get out of it. And this is a key question that I got from one of our clients, is asking like, how did you get into that conflict in the first place? So seeing if they have self-responsibility for things that have happened to them and how they problem solve through things, like seeing basically the picture that they're trying to paint of how they're able to get on the other side of that conflict, and also how they also handle things when under pressure. It's finding out through those stories that they would tell you and things that they've also gone through before, so then you can assess again if that is a match for you. And finally, a really good question to ask generally is, what does your day-to-day look like? So you want to ask them like, hey, if you had a full-time work, or before when you had full-time work, what does your day-to-day look like? What are your morning habits, your evening habits? How do you start the day? Do you start it in panic, or do you ask it like, oh, I knew, from the night before I already set my priorities for the day? Again, this is just to figure out if they could be a match when it comes to really working with you, rather than, if they're a little bit scattered, they might not be a match. If they're more of a morning person or an evening person, you'll find that out as well, especially if you're going to be on different time zones. And the main thing I always look out for when I ask this question is, how structured are they when it comes to their day? How intentional are they in the things that they do in the day-to-day? Now, it's best that these interviews are done in about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Of course, if the flow is good, if the back and forth is good, feel free to ask more questions. Feel free to also ask them if they have questions for you. The key things, honestly, that I look out for is if they're looking for what are the things that they can expect and what does the day-to-day look like working with you. These are usually really good questions, because that means that they're a little bit curious and they are brave enough to ask those questions as well. Now, if you guys like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there and comment below what are your favorite interview questions. I would love to know, and feel free to share it with everyone else. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos every Sunday and Thursday on how to work from home and how to have a business from home, which you guys can check out those two playlists right here and the latest video right here. Hope you guys have an amazing day, and remember that small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!